So here I'm going to be working on the cockpit of the X-Wing fighter. So I'm going to start out by removing the pieces for the cockpit, which consists of the cockpit, the center console, this is a back piece of the cockpit, and the seat. And then they all fit together like so. And this is basically what it's going to look like. And I have this photo etch that I got that I will be using to light the cockpit rather than using the single light that comes with the kit. And we have the center console and the two side panels here, which I'm removing from the photo etch. And you can see them here. And they basically are, this is where they're positioned on the cockpit. And I'll be backlighting them for the light to come through the holes. And I'll be painting the upper portion of the center console here to match the cockpit from the movie. I'm going to have to remove this piece right here from the center console for the photo etch, and I'm going to have to smooth down the sides so that the photo etch will lay flat and flush. So here, this little chunk in the center console will have to be removed, and the whole front will have to be shaved down so it's smooth. And I just used my blade, and I basically just kind of shaved it all away and tried to make it pretty smooth. And it's smooth enough that the photo etch fits pretty flush against it, as you can see right here. And I've removed some more of the center console to allow areas of light to come through the photo etch, because part of the plastic was still blocking those areas in the photo etch. And you can see this is the yellow light that comes to the cockpit, which I will not be using. But you can see when I drop the photo etch in there now that everything illuminates. So for the sides, I'm just going to go ahead and take this sanding stick I have, and I'm just going to go ahead and sand down the sides until they're smooth. So I'm going to start on the starboard side. So here the starboard side is sanded down pretty smooth, and here both sides are now sanded down, and you can see the photo etch rests on there, and there's no bumps holding it up, and it rests nice and flat. So I'm going to have to cut away in the plastic of the cockpit the areas for light to shine through the holes of the photo etch. So what my plan is to do here is I'm taking some of my latex mask that I use for doing chipping effects with painting, and I'm applying a tiny drop on the back side of the photo etch, and then I'm going to use that to hold the photo etch temporarily in place on the sides. As you can see, they're held in place here, so that I can then paint the entire cockpit with primer. And because the photo etch was stuck in place when I remove it, it reveals the holes on the side panels where the light is going to shine through. So what this does now is this has given me a marker on the panel here of where I'm going to need to cut away the plastic for my light to shine through the photo etch when it's actually permanently glued in place. And you can see here on both sides. And I'll have to remove a little bit of the sides on here as well. So I'm going to start with the starboard side here and just start shaving away some of the plastic to expose behind this area of lights. And you can see it's cut away here. And then I'm going to start working on the next portion by cutting away with the X-Acto blade. And here you can see both sides have been cut away for the LED light to shine through my photo etch. So you'll also notice on the kit here there's these pipes running along the sides, There's 4 pipes, which in the film are actually corrugated hoses. So what I want to do, like my Y-Wing build, is I'm going to use guitar string, and I have some guitar string here that's roughly the same diameter, and I want to use that to make hoses run along the sides. So the first thing I'm going to do here is remove this back portion here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away with an X-Acto blade the piping that is molded into the plastic. And then I'm also going to do the same in the back portion of the cockpit here, cut that away. So I've cut away all the molded piping on this plate and on the back portion of the cockpit here. So I'm going to put the plate back in here, and then I'm going to shoot the entire cockpit with another coat of primer. And you can see here it's looks pretty smooth. There's little bits that weren't perfectly shaved down, but it won't be seen once I take my guitar string and put it in place. It'll cover up anything that looks a little odd. So the first thing I need to do here is drill 4 holes in the back portion of the cockpit for the 4 hoses to glue to. So with my first hole drilled, I'm just going to put the guitar string in here just to make sure it's the right diameter and that it'll glue and hold in place pretty good. And it's holding itself just fine. So I've now drilled the remaining 3 holes. So all 4 holes are now drilled in the back. And I've cut 4 pieces of guitar string to length which I think will work. And then I've put a 90-degree bend in each piece of string so that I can glue it into place and it'll curve down back behind the pilot seat. So the port side hoses are now glued in place, and now the starboard hoses. So another quick shot of primer, and it's looking pretty good. It looks more like the corrugated hoses from the film. So I printed out these photos of the cockpit so I can paint the top portion here and the center console, so I have nice detail on the side here, and I can see exactly how it needs to be painted to match the actual ship in the movie. And you'll notice in this shot here there's some lights. I might try to do that with some fiber optic, and you can see these shots of Luke here. There's a shot right here of the side console, the cockpit, which is a little different than the photo etch, but it's fairly similar. But you can see there's not a lot of painting details, mostly just gray. And then I also have a nice shot of his joystick here for firing and flying the ship that I'm going to use for reference. So I've painted the center console with primer, as you can see here. And now I'm going to use my German gray Tamiya paint, and I'm going to airbrush that over the primer, and you have what we see here, which is a dark gray center console. I'm going to use the same Tamiya German gray to paint the top portion of the front of the cockpit that you see right here. I'm also using it to paint the pilot seat. And here you can see how it looks with the area painted the dark gray. I sprayed this portion with hairspray before applying the German gray so that now I can go through and scrape away the German gray, revealing the primer underneath. Rather than trying to paint these fine lines, I just scrape away and I have nice detailed top portion of the center cockpit. And I've taped off the sides here of that front portion, and I'm going to use a slightly darker gray just to slightly offset it, and again scrape away the paint here, revealing my primer underneath, so you'll see just a slightly different shade of a gray, just like in my photo reference. here's how it looks with the photo etch center console in place. And I'm going to do a little more detailing here on the top, painting this little tube area. And I've also detailed the center portion as much as possible to this reference photo I have here. The light gray around the displays and all, and the gray stripe. And here I've got the side consoles primed and then painted with their detail of German gray. So I'm also going to weather the hoses here, and again I'm going to use my German gray, just heavily watered down, and just do a wash over the hoses so that it fills in the cracks and gives it more depth. I'm also using the German gray just to do some darkening of this whole back section. Then applying some Tamiya Rust Pastel just to give it a little more weathering look. And then I'm going to use my sand Tamiya Pastel to weather and dirty up the pilot seat. And I'm going to put the pilot seat into the cockpit and then throw Luke in there for good measure just to have a little peek at how it's looking. And I'm pretty happy with the way it's turning out. So now it's time to take the side consoles and center console, and I'm going to paint the backside with Tamiya clear yellow paint over some of the holes so that when light shines through it'll look like yellow lights. And then I'm doing the same with Tamiya clear red, filling in some other various holes so that they will look like they are red lights. And here you can see all three photo etch have various colored yellow and red. And with the light shining through it looks like this. And then I also have these areas here that I need to fill in. And so now I'm applying a little bit of glue to the side panel so that I can attach my photo etch to the sides of the cockpit. And here you can see both sides have been attached and they're painted and secured in place. And I cut some paper that I'm putting behind the photo etch to diffuse the light when it shines through so it's an even spread across all the lights. Here is the joystick for piloting the X-Wing. Gave it a shot of primer. Then I gave it some flat black Tamiya spray can. And then I'm doing a little detailing with some silver on some of the knobs and some red as you see here. And also some German gray on the bottom half of the stick. And then it's just securing that in place inside the cockpit. And here we have the targeting computer, which comes out from behind Luke's head. And I primed it with primer, and you can see here there's a little bump there. That's where the screen would be for the targeting computer. So my plan is to shave that flat, and I'm going to print out the targeting computer graphic that you see in the movie and attach it. So I've printed it out and painted the targeting computer black, and I'm going to put the piece right there where the screen goes. I'm actually using a little bit of black paint as opposed to glue and just putting it in place, and when the paint dries it'll hold it. And then I'm going to paint it based on these printouts that I did and try to make it as closely as possible matched. And there's that wire there which I'm going to try to do. So I'm doing the silver, doing yellow in the front, the trim, and I think I got it pretty close and accurate to what you see in the film. And there's my targeting computer screen I printed out. And here are three different screens that I was trying to decide on for the center console. And I'm going to remove the little piece between the large and second screen, and I'm going to use this targeting screen in there. So I'm going to lay that right on top, and then I'm going to glue it into place. And here you can see it glued into place, what it looks like backlit from an LED. So I put the center console into the cockpit, my pilot in the cockpit, and I've attached this upper portion around the cockpit just to kind of make it feel complete. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 LEDs I have. One I'm going to put into position where the kit LED would go, and I have these 2 others that I'm just going to put on either side to light up the side panels. And then I'm just going to give it a little 9-volt juice, and there you go. You can see here the side panels are lit. Here you can see even better the side panels are lit and a little bit of light coming from the center console. And there you can see it really well. So I'm really happy with how this has turned out. This is all I'm going to be showing in this video. It's getting a little more complicated to do all the electronics. So probably in my next video I'll be delving more into the electronics and how I'm actually going to wire the lights to work for the cockpit and other areas of the ship.